2018. Let the record show that we are missing one commissioner, Mr. Altmans. First thing up is order of business. Rita, is Mr. Kessel?
He's coming, I guess.
There shouldn't be any changes to the order of business.
I don't think he can.
So I would look for a motion to approve the order of business.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
We have a
Second.
motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion on the order of business? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Order of business is approved. The consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that commissioners would like to discuss? Now I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda
Second.
with a second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner? Aye. Chair votes aye. Consent agenda is approved. We have no timetable. These are all non-timetable items. The first thing up is the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library Support Letter. Mr. Kessel, if you could kindly explain some of the details behind the support letter.
Thank you, Commissioner President Decker. Commissioner President Decker and I attended a meeting last week which provided some updates with regard to the TR Presidential Library and an upcoming meeting that is going to happen of their foundation. That foundation board is meeting March 15th and 16th in Minneapolis, and the discussion revolved around the city's support for the project. As I think all of you are aware, there is a discussion about siting that is happening. In 2015, the TR Presidential Library Foundation Board endorsed Dickinson as the site in which that building was going to be constructed as part of a long process that happened legislatively. Since that time, the board has evolved and they have reopened the discussion of siting, and they are actually considering a location or locations in Medora at this time. So I went back and reviewed the resolutions that the commission has passed previous to today, and in those resolutions it is very clear that the commission's intent has been that our support, our financial support, was reliant upon a location, a construction location in Dickinson. And so what this letter does is state very clearly that we continue to support the TR Presidential Library being constructed, and that our financial support is contingent upon a Dickinson location in terms of its construction. It also applies to the Elkhorn cabin replica. So I put together the letter for your review. It's in a draft format. We can certainly update or change it before we would actually provide this to the board members. But that is the intention, is to provide it not only to Mr. Pitts, who is the board president, but also to all members of the board. So I would submit the letter to you with a recommendation of approval after your review. Maybe there's some things you want to change or update. But it's important that we at least discuss and hopefully approve some letter at today's meeting, since we will not meet again before the March 15th board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Kessel. There's a couple of things. One, we'll have to update, obviously, the date on it.
Yeah.
Because it says March 5th, so it'll have to be today. And then I guess we need to discuss, which will be item number 2 here, our commitment resolution to the additional funding for operations. In here, this letter states committing another $100,000 annual operation funding. I know within the item coming up next, we've set parameters of $85,000 to $125,000. So maybe that needs to be in this also, updated. And then I guess I'd put it to the commissioners, your feelings on that operation money.
I'm okay with the operation money because we did state it before. The one item in the letter that I have a concern with where it says a decision to seek the repayment of 300,000 operational funds provided as part of the initial 3 million commitment was not made. I'm not so sure I would have voted at that meeting to give the 300,000 if I knew that they were gonna change the venue. You know, so I think if that venue is changed, that we also ask for our 300,000 back. That's my personal feeling.
I soft pedaled that piece specifically.
Mr. President, I would echo the same sentiments of Commissioner Steiner. Although I was not a part of that vote, I would say looking forward, we have a responsibility to our taxpayers and to make sure that if we are using sales tax dollars, it is going to a project that's going to benefit them within city limits. And if the library does, the board moves forward with changing the location, then I would agree with Commissioner Steiner, that's something that we will need to revisit.
Mr. Friedrich, any thoughts?
I tend to agree with the rest of them. I just don't see why we would financially support a project that's outside this, the city of Dickinson. I totally understood our commitment when the building was gonna be built here, but if it's not gonna be built here, I think we can find a different use for that $3 million that would support Dickinson a lot better, so.
Into the $300,000 operational funds provided?
I would agree that we ask for the money back.
Okay. I think you have
Good. So
a consensus on that, so we can adjust this to say that we will seek the 300,000 back.
So just in order of summary, the three items that will change on the letter is, of course, the date. The operational subsidy will reflect the resolution language, and then the 300,000 is, we'll ask for those dollars to be returned to the city of Dickinson.
Just for clarification, how was our money tied to the state funding? Was there any?
It's a good question, Mr. Friedrich. Our initial commitment of $3 million secured a state grant. The state right now has granted a little over $12 million to the TR Library project, and our funds secured 6 of that 12. So it's essential, and part of those that legislation that provided those fundings also says that they have to be vertical by the end of 2018. They have to start going vertical. They don't have to be complete, but they have to start. So that's another item that they're going to discuss at their meeting in Minneapolis. But that's a great question.
And Mr. Kessel, just to clarify for viewers who may be confused, we have given them so far, the city of Dickinson has given $300,000 in operational funds, and they're now requesting an additional $100,000. Or between 85 and 125, correct?
Commissioner Trustham, the TR Library Foundation has requested, or at least through channels, has requested more in operational dollars than what we are about to potentially provide. They would like to see about $500,000 in operational funding. That's not a commitment that our hospitality tax revenues can support, not without making additional changes to other commitments that the commission has made.
And to clarify that, Mr. Kissel, that's $500,000 a year.
A year.
A year.
Correct. A
Yes,
year.
not just total.
Yes.
And what we're committing to, in a sense, is it would be the 85 to 125,000 over a period of years to whatever we decide. It's not, and they had made the request of $500,000 per year for operation.
So there hasn't been a formal request, it's been more
Correct.
feeling out the
We've had a request from a staff member to the board, to the foundation board, but not from the board itself. So with those changes, if the commission is comfortable with it, I would recommend that you provide approval pending those changes.
So I would look for a motion to approve the letter with the changes.
So move.
We have a
Second.
motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion or questions for Mr. Kessler or staff? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The letter is approved. Next up is our city commitment resolution, and this is the amount that we would be taking from the hospitality tax in an annual operation subsidy to if it is actually built in the city of Dickinson. And it would range from no less than $85,000 to no more than $125,000. Yep, for a period of 5 years, as is stated, yes. So we are committing to a maximum of $625,000 over a 5-year period. And if I guess if I expand on this a little bit, I think some of the members felt that it would enhance maybe the placement of the library in Dickinson if we committed to operational funds. Because that is going to be a huge undertaking just to secure that kind of money, once it's up to operate it. Because it's going to take about 5 years to gain some traction. And a matter of fact, they even said they might take 10 years to gain traction. Am I incorrect in that?
Mr. President Decker, no, they certainly said that there'll be a period of time, up to 10 years, that would, they hope to be operating in the black. They just don't know when that'll take place, and they're estimating that could take place, or it could take some time in order to do that. So our operational subsidy should not be one that continues during the whole time the operations of that library happen.
Any questions then for?
And for us to contribute any more than this would be a major strain on our hospitality tax, would it not?
Commissioner Friedrich, I did review our budget that we have provided to the City Commission last year. I believe that $100,000 is kind of our sweet spot, but that we could, depending upon collections, go as high as 125, and that's how that's why the resolution was written that way. If we want to go more, we could, but it will affect other commitments that have been made by the commission on other projects.
I feel comfortable with the 85,125. What I wouldn't feel comfortable about is pushing a higher amount of subsidy onto what could be a completely different board at that time, after it's constructed for another 5 years. I think, maybe some of you are sitting here, maybe some of us aren't, but I'd hate to tell another board that, we're going to cash strapped you in 5 years for another 5 years or so.
I would agree with that, I guess.
So, Mr. Kessel, my question is, was the hospitality tax the original bucket, if you want to call it that, for the TR library?
Commissioner Trustum, our commitment of the $3 million actually comes from a couple different buckets. It uses sales tax dollars as well, and in addition to hospitality tax dollars.
Okay.
Does the commission want me to speak to the issue of how this resolution may bind future commission members?
Sure.
There is a construction in the law that is very similar to, it's an analysis that is actually used by the legislature with the same sense that current legislatures cannot bind future legislatures to certain commitments. So in the event that the commission membership changes, this resolution would not prevent this future commissions from reevaluating that commitment.
So if it just changes one member, they could reevaluate?
Yes.
Okay. I'm comfortable with it as between the 85 and the 125. I don't think we can dedicate any more dollars to this. We've gone, I think, above and beyond to show that we are committed to this project in Dickinson. board so chooses to place it somewhere else, then we'll use our money somewhere else too. So,
I would tend to agree with you. I think we'd like to see the project here, but
Right.
we don't want to strap ourselves.
we are not going
Either.
to commit dollars to a project outside the city limits.
I totally agree, so.
I think that the commission is in support of that as a whole. My only question, I'm looking at the hospitality breakdown that we got on our February 20th meeting, and it seems like we have quite a few dedications out of there. Are we going to have to change anything?
Commissioner Trustum, I don't believe we'll have to change any future commitments. We do have some balance in that account that we could use. I mean, if the commission wanted to make a one-time operational subsidy in addition to these annual, we could afford to do that using the fund balance. I'm always hesitant to use a fund balance for an operational subsidy, but if it's a one-time, that is an option that the commission could consider.
Again, I just want to make sure that we have the financial understanding before we issue those operations.
And I think if you, Commissioner Trustin, if you review that document, I'm not sure exactly the one that you have in front of you, we are making conservative increased collections in the future. I think we add about a 1% increasing revenue annually for the next few years. And I did base my recommendation that's in this resolution on that increasing revenue.
Well, if there's no more questions for Mr. Kessel on this resolution, this is resolution number,
Oh, I'm sorry, 052018.
Mr. President,
yes.
I move we approve said resolution.
So we have a motion to approve resolution 05-2018
Second.
with a second. Any further discussion or questions for staff? Now we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Resolution 05-2018 is approved. Item number 3, during our meeting, it was proposed that I travel next week to Minnesota, Minneapolis actually, to meet with the board, present the letter in person, and make sure that they understand where our commitment is. I guess looking at,
I think that would be a good thing. It still shows some more that we are committed to this here. So I'd say go on, do a good job. If it fails, you're on record.
I would second that.
yeah, I think the biggest thing is just to make sure that they understand where our commitment is at. Because I think there had been some,
I would agree.
some discussion on where we would put our dollars. And I don't want them to have any doubt where we will put our dollars. So,
I mean, is this where they're going to make the final decision?
We received a letter, Commissioner Frederick, yesterday from the board president, Bruce Pitts, which outlined that it is his intent to make the decision on March 15th and 16th. Now, maybe the board chooses not to, but that is their stated intent, is to make a final decision on site.
I think they need to do something just because of the deadline from the state.
It is 2018, they're going to have to get going, so.
So to clarify, if we pull back our 3, the state has to pull back their 12.
6 of it.
A portion of it, yes. The whole 6, our Commissioner Steiner, the $3 million that we committed was a local match, and that secured about half of the state's commitment, not the whole commitment.
Okay.
So the project would lose around $9 million, a little over $9 million with the state's commitment and our local match.
Because I would imagine their law specifically states and would support our site.
Correct.
Oh, so if they found another 3 million, it wouldn't kick that money back in, huh?
Well, if the as I read the legislation, I believe that time has passed, and so they couldn't find a local match somewhere. So it also commits, the legislation requires that a minimum of a $14 million building be built. So it's designed around finding private donations, the local match, and their state funds.
Okay, so I guess I would just seek a motion for the travel next week, approving the travel.
Move we approve travel.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor of the travel?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Guess I'll be going to Minneapolis. We'll move on. We have a contract with ND Energy Services from Public Works. Mr. Zuroff?
Morning, Mayor Decker and commission members. I bring for you this morning a water purchase agreement with ND Energy Services. It's for the purchase of treated water from our water reclamation facility. The term of the agreement is from the execution date through December 31st, 2018. And ND Energy Services guarantees the purchase of at least 15 million gallons of reused water from the city for a cost of $112,500. This includes a deposit of 25% of the guarantee in the amount of $28,125. The reuse water purchase prices are $7.50 per 1,000 gallons up to 100 million gallons, and then $6.50 for the next 100, or from 100, for the next 100 to 200 million gallons, and $5.50 per 100 per 1,000 for the reuse water over 200 million gallons. And that includes, everything over 200 million gallons. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I want to thank Attorney Murtha for getting this agreement put together quickly, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions from Mr. Zuroff on this contract? Is there a anticipation of how many gallons they're looking at, or?
Yeah, I would say 50 million is well under what they're looking at.
Okay.
If it's a continuation of what was proposed last year, we'd be looking at, I would say, 100 to 200 million gallons.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Zuroff or city staff? Not, I'd look for a motion on the contract.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the contract with ND Energy Services.
Second.
With a second. Any further discussion or questions? Go ahead and vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich? Aye. Chair votes aye. Contract is approved. We have nothing from Planning and Building and Codes. Commissioners, is there anything you want to bring up? Discuss? Mr. Kessel?
If
Go
I
ahead.
could, President Decker, I just wanted to commend Public Works Director Zuroff and his staff. I think that our streets, for the snow removal effort, we have bare streets in many of our heavily used areas, Sim Street, 21st State. You know, to have 5 to 8 inches of snow and within 24 hours have bare streets, I think is just amazing. They're getting into the residential areas today. They'll do the downtown windrow that on Thursday. But it's not perfect, I understand that, but I hope that the citizens of Dickinson are as happy as I am with the efforts that the Public Works Department has put forth. And it's really a team effort. That's why I use Public Works Department, because it goes beyond the streets. The water utilities and the solid waste staff have also kicked in, and I just want to commend them. I think they've done a great job.
Question for you, Mr. Zuroff. How many of our city employees have we had out on the streets this last 48 hours?
I would have to, let's see, we actually finished up most residential last night about midnight. So we've been running since 3 Sunday morning till midnight last night. We have had all the street department, 3 or 4 from solid waste, and a couple from the water utilities. So a minimum of 12 up to probably 18 employees in the last 2 days have helped with snow removal.
Mr. President, I'd like to also make a statement that I was going to say about the exact same thing that Mr. Kessel did. It was good to get up in the morning and drive down to work and see how nice the streets were. I mean, a lot of people told me how well they thought it was, and they liked it. On Facebook, it was discussed, and there were a lot of likes on there too. There wasn't one complaint. Not saying there won't be a complaint out there, but nice job to your crew. And
Thank you, and I will sure tell them. And they have worked hard the last couple of days to try to get it right.
I know it's always difficult. I mean, you never know what to anticipate. I mean, early on, everybody, it was the storm of the century coming, and then it was significant, but not something we can't handle. So I think we've grown accustomed to being able to move wherever we want to move at a moment's notice, and we just have to be, as citizens, a little more patient and allow things to clear up before we go about our normal activities. I think some people just want to be able to, no matter what the weather is, do whatever they want. And sometimes that's not the case.
And again, Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions or concerns, please call Public Works 456-7979, and we'll try to solve your question and concern.
President Decker, may I ask, Public Works Director Zaruff, would you mind talking to the commission about the use of brine and how that helps to clear the streets, and how many contractors did we use during this?
I can see it. I can see the brine working because it allows you to clear the streets right down to the surface.
And that's the idea, of, I guess, of brine is to not, where sand does work in making the surface not slick, you know, it does put some material there, but brine, the idea of brine is actually to get back down to the street itself. In other words, use the pavement, original pavement, as your be able to stop. And you can see now too with the amount of brine we've put on, some of that, they call it anti-icing, is to put on before a storm. But since we have applied it year-round, you can see in the different areas that this last storm did stick to the street. It basically relieves that from sticking to the street, and some of that brine that is on the street, you can see that has removed the snow. Uses the brine is I guess, takes some practice, depending on temperatures, mixtures, and I think we're getting a lot better at that. And with this storm, the temperatures were about where would work well for brine, above, not below zero. So it melts the snow and then keeps it from sticking on the street. One of the things, to respond to Mr. Kessel's question about contractors, we didn't use any contractors in this storm. I didn't bring in any. We have had some long discussions with the other departments in Public Works and about using them, about them stepping up and working long hours, and they all said they would want to do that versus contracting out, and I think it's beneficial for the city too to pay a little overtime versus paying a contractor to come in and do it. I think with this storm, if it was much bigger, we definitely wouldn't have been able to clear the streets as well as we did in the last couple of days. But because the wind did finally die down, we were able to get to those areas and remove the snow, and I think it worked pretty good.
And I know I drove around during the storm just to look at the areas that were problematic last year, the northwest corners of our city limits, and there were a couple of areas that were bad, but not nothing like last year where it blew in 6 to 8 foot drifts. It was funny when I was on the northwest side of town, we were driving around in the blizzard, and there was a dad with his kid out on a playground playing in the blizzard on a playground. So it was North Dakota full effect. So, but good job. So, anything else, Commission? Last-ish, public issues of city concern not on the agenda. If there's anybody from the city wants to come forward with a city concern, please come forward. No public issues of concern. I would look then for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.